The Sabres Jekyll and Hyde season continues on. We'll get into that and more here on Sabres Edge. What's up and welcome to Sabres Edge presented by Nickel City Mafia. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Top Shelf Timmy Corks and my co-host Sammy Saucy Mitts. Sammy, what's going on, my man?
Not much. We are currently towards the end of the second period in a 1-1 game against the Hurricanes. So there's that sort of excitement going on. But other than that, we've had a very up and down week as Sabres fans.
Yeah, I mean, like the title says, we've kind of had a Jekyll and Hyde type of thing going on. So we're seeing some of the good things with the Sabres, and one of you going is one of the worst, some of the worst. So, it's kind of been an interesting ride so far this season in general. Let's kind of kick it off from there. So our first game last week was the first game at Philadelphia versus the Flyers. Just kind of got to go over some stats right there. So we have Byro playing his first game in the NHL with 2 goals. Middlestat still going on a roll with 1 goal, 1 assist. Thompson with a goal and an assist, or a goal and 2 assists. Owen Power had a goal as well. Greenway, Krebs, Peterka all had an assist. Tuck with 2 assists. Overall, the Sabres had 14 shots on goal, but there was 40 shots against with 2 goals given in.
It was 15 shots if you count the empty net shot.
Yeah. I was kind of, I just follow the ESPN box score, so I'm always like, I don't know, I'll just write down what they say. So, what are your thoughts on that game?
That was a tough game. I think that the way that the Flyers play in general is kind of the antithesis of what we want to be doing. We want kind of just the high skill, high event kind of game style. And the Flyers are just the opposite of that. I think that it's they really do a good job of just stifling opportunities coming into their zone. We saw that we were having a really tough time breaking their line. And honestly, they kind of took it to us. They got, I think it was 40 shots in the first game against us to our 15. We really didn't deserve to win. I think we might have outchanced them, but the flow of the game didn't really feel like we were doing spectacularly. Obviously, if we did outchance them, that goes to show that we were able to play a pretty solid defensive game in our own zone, keep all their chances to the outside so that they were just peppering shots on Luukkonen. But Luukkonen still had to play pretty well to maintain that game for us. But all in all, I think that was kind of a tough game. It's lovely to see Byro get 2 goals, his first 2 of his career. But other than that, other than that and the win, I should say, there's not too much where I'm super excited about that. And I just think it's kind of credited to how the Flyers play and how that kind of counters us super well.
Yeah, I feel like this season we're kind of noticing a theme with some of these defensive teams going up against the Sabres where they're kind of daring the Sabres to break through the neutral zone and try to get the puck in there. They're almost putting up 4 of their guys up there at the in front of the blue line and daring the Sabres to dump in the puck instead of trying to carry in the puck. And it's kind of been working this season for a lot of these teams. And like you said, it wasn't – the positive for me taking out of it was, they had 15 shots on net, but they were able to get 5 goals. And that's, hey, if you're able to produce at that rate, that's great. Is that something you can continue on? Most likely not, and that's something that we would see in the future too as well. But the other thing too, I think, the biggest worry going into these games as well was, UPL was our primary goaltender. And, he kind of stood on top of his head and, help win a game for the Sabres. Overall, what have your thoughts been on like UPL just leading up to this game?
Yeah, so I thought that the UPL's actually been pretty good. I think he's in his starts like 3-1 or 2-1 maybe. He's been like he's been playing pretty well. He lost the game. I think he's the goalie of record in the game against the Devils where Comrie got hurt. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so I think like he's the goalie of record there. So his record has another like loss on it, but I don't really blame him for that game. He's coming in relief halfway through the game. Like that's tough. But I think that for his starts, he's been pretty solid. And really, I've got no complaints about the way that he's playing. He had a tough second game against the Flyers after saving 40 in the first game. I don't think any of us had really expected him to be able to have a repeat performance. And on top of that, I think that the chances that the Flyers were getting were just better in the second game. So like we really left him out to dry there. So again, it's not one of those situations where I'm like, oh, it's UPL. We need to send UPL to the Sun. We can't have him here anymore. But like I think he's been good. I think he's done what he needs to do. And if he plays at kind of this level for the entire season, I don't see why we're not a playoff team.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because we didn't expect UPL to be really anything for the Sabres this season. It was kind of in between Levi and also Comrie. And now UPL, I don't know. He might be our best goalie. We'll kind of get into that conversation when we go over the Maple Leafs game. But yeah, it's nice to see that he's actually helping the Sabres wins games. I think this is the UPL that we saw at the beginning of last season, and hopefully he can continue this going on. I know Granato spoke the other day about what his plans are going to be with the goalie situation. It seems like it's just going to be a rotational type of thing. There's not going to be a number one goaltender at all this season until maybe someone really stands out. Besides that, what do you think of Byro's game overall? He had 2 goals. His first goal was kind of a very interesting goal, I would say, maybe an old school one. And then the second goal, I don't know.
It's an empty net one.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of got to give me at that point.
There's not much to say against or about the final goal. It was nice of Middlestat. He recognized that Byro was on the wing there, like gave it to him. It's cool that Don was like putting him out at the end there to give him the opportunity. But I thought that in the first game, Byro had a good game. And that goal is that it's exactly that kind of greasy goal that we talk about when we're saying we can't just play on the perimeter. We can't expect our skill to get us all the way through. Like these are the goals. He's in front of the net. He's being attacked. He is pouncing on a rebound. It gets to his stick. Kind of luckily, probably. I don't think you expect it to bounce that way off of the goaltender, but it gets there. He's falling down. He's getting pushed, and he gets it in the net at like all costs. Perfect. That's exactly kind of what you want from a player who's coming up from kind of a grindy role. Like you're not expecting him to be like Jeff Skinner or Tage Thompson. Like if you're expecting goals from him, you're expecting him to get in kind of those dirty areas, and he did, and he got a goal. And I thought that was a good showing all in all for him.
Yeah, and it's a great way to start off your NHL career as well. So, it's nice to see a guy do that, and it's nice to see some other guys get on to staying on the board as well. Middlestat, it comes out of the game with 2 points and just keeps on going with this the hot season right now. And then those worries that we had about Thompson at the beginning of the season, I think we can forget about those now. 1 goal, 2 assists in that game. It feels like Middlestat and Thompson are kind of like, I would say, our 1-2 best offensive players on the team so far. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I think as of recently, earlier in the season, it was definitely Greenway. He came out the gate really hot. He's cooled off a bit on as far as the offense go. I think that he hasn't really relented anything on the defensive side. His penalty killing still great.
Yeah.
During the game that we're watching now, he kind of had one go off of him, but what are you going to do about that? Other than that, strange instance, I thought he's been pretty good defensively, and he definitely adds a different aspect to the offense, but he's cooled off, and I think that Middlestat and Thompson have kind of taken that spot as the offensive production makers. And by the way, Thompson's also been very good defensively. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been a big revelation is that we're seeing a full game from Thompson right now. And I think Greenway, I don't think he's going to ever carry on the production that he was at the beginning of the season. But hey, it's nice to see him that he's still producing. He's getting, like you said, he's playing in the penalty kill. Him and Thompson up in front, that clogging up a lot of the ways for offensive players to kind of get on net. So they've been working well with their sticks as well. And then, Thompson, like we said, he's just going to continue on be our best player so far. So I think that's something that we can wrap up with that game, just because there wasn't too much to talk about. Obviously, the offensive chances are kind of a little bit to worry about, but it helps even it out with UPL standing on top of his head. But before we move on to the second game, let's go ahead and just shout out some of the people that are in our chat right now.
yep.
So let's set up, Tom. He's been a day one guy, so thanks for coming out, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Yep, Mad Chatter. He pops in. No,
Are,
none of us
are,
are
you,
a
are you a
podger.
podger?
I am not a podger.
Do you wish you were a podger?
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I'm happy being a Corcoran, but I love the Podgers. They're basically my brothers too. So, no, I feel like I'm part of a family, but just an extended member of there. And then obviously we got our guy Bill. Bill's out there. Glad that you made it out to the show right now. We're looking forward to hearing some of your comments about the games as well. So don't be afraid to shout out everybody on the chat right now. So yeah, let's go ahead. We had a home and home against the Flyers. And this time around, they played in Buffalo. Buffalo, we are wearing our black and red. So we're usually thinking, hey, this is going to be a win for us, automatic W. Didn't end up that way. Just kind of going over the stats in that game. Sabres had 22 shots for, and then they had 19 shots against with 5 goals. Through that game, we had Yoki Haru with a goal. Then we had Middlestat and Paterka each with an assist on that goal. And I think the biggest things that I took away for the Sabres on that, we had a Tuck at a -3, and we had Power at a -5 for that game. We also had some injury updates with Cousins actually getting injured in that fight with Hathaway. And then Samuelson, I think we talked about this earlier, does he have that injury bug? But he actually left the game with I think it was like 2 minutes into the game, right? He didn't play.
Yeah, he did not play very much of that game.
Yeah, so I didn't watch too much of the game. So Sam, give me your thoughts on that game.
Yeah, so I felt like everything that was wrong with the first game against the Flyers compounded into the second. They weren't getting the same level of shot production against us, so it definitely reflects more poorly on UPL when you look at his .737 save percentage that game.
Yeah.
But again, it just felt like it was all of those goals were like breakaway goal. That's not even true, but they definitely had a breakaway goal in there. But it felt like they got a lot of good chances off the rush there, and they were hemming us in our zone. Like we were not really able to get out of our zone until the third period, and in which case we got a little bit of offense going. It was just kind of miserable, to be honest with you. Again, they just play a style of game that really stifles ours. And when it's not going well for us, when we're not scoring 5 goals against them, it's tough because then you just see it. We're really, I think you get into your own head, you can't score, and all of a sudden they're piling on a few goals and it just spirals from there. And poor UPL gets left out to dry. And obviously he didn't do too much to help himself there, but it was, again, it's not really something where you can blame him on that one. Also, the one game that we lost in the Goat Heads last year, also against Philly. So
really,
yeah,
interesting.
Maybe it's a trend. Maybe we need to stop wearing the Goat Heads against Philly because that I remember the game last year too. It was like pretty bad.
Yeah, I can't actually recall that game. I think I just put that in the back of my head, and I just
you're like it never happened. We only went in the Goat Heads, right? A week from now, we'll forget that this one happened. We'll forget that this was a Goat Heads game.
Yeah, and I feel like the Flyers were probably coming back out to that game being like, hey, the Sabres kind of stole one against us last time. We need to come out with a little bit more energy. And I think it doesn't help with the first game against the Flyers that Hart left halfway through the game and Urson came in to cover it, kind of cover up. You're getting a goalie who's probably wasn't ready for this game at all. And then Urson comes in for the second game. He's ready. He did his studying for this game too. So
Urson's also a Sabre killer. Last year he got a shutout against us.
Really?
Yeah, and his numbers are not good if you look him up. Like
Yeah, I was looking at stats this season, and they're not too hot. So I
Yeah.
mean, he's one. Yeah, like you said, he's probably a Sabres killer, like Mike Comrie and a few other players. But the one guy that really sticks out to me is Mike Comrie would always kill us when we played Ottawa. So yeah, I mean, really, it was a game that I think it needs to be forgotten. I mean, after that game, you heard everybody talking about the Sabres being like, "All right, here we go again. What are
Right,
the
yeah.
Sabres?" And it's fair to say that at this point because they haven't done anything consistently where you're sitting there and be like, they're coming out with the same energy. They came out a little bit slow at the beginning of the game. So what's motivating them to keep going? You can't be having these up and down seasons. It's crazy to think about that we're already talking about this, but you need to put a string. You have to have a win streak, and you
Right.
have to have wins against certain teams like the Philadelphia Flyers because, yeah, Philadelphia was at the top of the Metro division early in the season, but now you see them kind of petering out,
Yeah.
like a few of these other teams like Ottawa Senators or the Montreal Canadiens. But these are teams at the skill. They don't have the skill level that the Sabres have. The Sabres have the ability to go out every night and score 5 goals. The Philadelphia Flyers really don't have that. And to have that against you and have UPL just kind of lay an egg that game, it stinks to see that. It sucks to see that. Just because, the Sabres are at some point in the season are going to have to get on a roll. You can't be going through 2 wins and a loss or 1 and a loss, 1 and a loss. You're going to have to put on a win streak, and that's going to be having to start when you start facing some of these weaker teams. Was there anything, I think I'm always picking on Power, but Power with a -5. What did you think of his game that night?
Honestly, I did not know that he was -5 that game. That's tough. That's really tough.
Yeah.
I hadn't really noticed him out of the crowd.
Okay.
It makes sense though. I get it. He's again like you had said, you'd like to see him play a little more physically aggressive. One player that I who stood out to me in those Philly games was Jacob Bryson because I thought he played good in his season debut, and then against the Philadelphia Flyers, it was so clear that he was being bullied by the physicality. Again, they just play a very chippy,
Yeah.
just hard-hitting game. They're going to fight you in corners and they're going to do it aggressively. And he was getting destroyed. It was clear that he was a undersized defenseman, which isn't really talked about much with his game because there's other deficiencies, but that really stood out to me in that game. But one thing that you've mentioned before is that you'd like to see Owen Power kind of play a more physical game, and in this instance, maybe that was the case. Maybe they were really taking advantage of the fact that he's a 20-year-old kid who doesn't really like to use his body that much, and they were really taking it to him in corners. But I didn't necessarily notice that. The -5 seems to corroborate your theory more than what I saw, but
Yeah. I don't think it doesn't mean that he has to be more physical. I think he just needs to be a bit more aggressive. Like you see him timid in the corners, even in the defensive zone in front of the net. He's just a little bit timid. He's not just being aggressive and going after the puck or going after the opposing player. I mean, that's something that he's just going to have to add to his game to continue to get better. Yes, you're a great skater. Maybe your shot needs to get a little bit stronger. But, you play defense, you're drafted first overall, you're going to, and your size, you just got to be a little bit more aggressive and be more confident in yourself when you're going in there. You have all the tools to be that. You have the tools to have a hard slap shot. You have the tools to be a little bit more aggressive and use your body to box people out. But we still haven't seen him that season. Like I said, I didn't watch too much of the game because I got out of the hospital late that night. So yeah, the -5 that is the one thing that kind of stuck out to me. And then his season has kind of followed the Sabres Buffalo or the Sabres Dr. Jekyll and Hyde theme that's going on. So he came out with a -3 as well, but I think a lot of his probably just comes with a lot of time out in the ice
Yeah. I wonder about Alex Chuck a little bit recently this season. It kind of almost feels like he might be playing injured. More recently, like he's been putting up some points, but at the start of the season, if you remember, like
Yeah.
he was out for the preseason, slumped a bit at the start of the season, and he's putting up more points now, but it doesn't feel like he's really reached the level of his game that like that we know he can play at. During this game, he had kind of he's got the only goal for the Sabres
Yep.
during the current Carolina game that's going on. And he like really kind of crashed his way into the net running through one of the Carolina players to end up scoring that goal. And like that's more of what we expect from him, a kind of high pace, kind of aggressive forechecking. But I don't think that we really have seen that to the level that we saw it last year, even with this game and that goal. Like I don't know. I wonder if maybe there's just something nagging that's kind of keeping Tuck from playing at the level that we know he can.
Yeah. Was it this game or was it the game before that the first Flyers game where Tuck actually got into a fight as well?
I don't really know. I'm not
I think
sure. Did he
I'm,
fight that against the Flyers?
or was it I'm trying to think what game it was. If anyone in the chat knows, remind us. But I know he's trying to get some things. I think he's trying to do a lot of things to get his game going. And one of the things I remember him getting into a fight.
I know he did get into a fight earlier. I'm trying to think about who it was because I don't think it was a Flyers game necessarily, but could be
Yeah.
wrong.
Anyways, speaking of fights, we had Dylan Cousin, leaving the game with a fight as well. I mean, Dylan Cousins has quietly, for me personally, hasn't been having that great of a season. I think I have a little bit higher expectations for him, but I'm seeing like the Toronto game, him sitting out of there, as well as the Hurricane game going on right now. I don't know. It's kind of nice having him in the lineup, out of the lineup, maybe watching the games because I feel like he's almost like what I say vibe killer when it comes to the offense because I don't feel like he does a very well job of maintaining the puck in the offensive zone.
Thank you so much,
And
Tom, for the donation.
thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we got that.
So I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate that he got into a fight. I think the one thing that this team might be lacking is kind of like that tough guy who can get into who's able to like sacrifice himself for fights. Do we need that type of player on this team? I don't think so. Do you need that in the NHL? Probably not. I mean, it would be always nice to have a player like a Tkachuk who can probably do that for you, but those guys don't grow on trees. Those are very specific players. So it's hard to see a guy like Cousins, who's one of our younger top players on the team, get into a fight. But it's almost refreshing for me to kind of see him out of the lineup right now.
Right.
I don't know if that's if you have that same sentiment as me when it comes to season.
Yeah, I thought he's been having a pretty bad season. Despite the points he's putting up, it's been tough for him. He's been kind of a loss every time he's had possession. Like it feels like it's coming off his stick and going to the other team.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I hate to beat like the forechecking point, but he's kind of he was one of the more effective forecheckers for us last year. He was he's fast and he kind of can get into areas quickly. And it doesn't feel like he's been doing much of that this year. And on top of the fact that like he's never really fully fleshed out his defensive game, even though I fully believe that he has the capability. What I think we've seen is just kind of an incomplete product from him this year, despite the fact that he's getting those points. And maybe taking some time off and seeing the game from the press box will help him. But yeah, I thought that he's been playing poorly. And then when he got in that fight, I was like, what are you doing? And he got destroyed in that fight. I do think you mentioned kind of like a Brady Tkachuk. I feel like he kind of has the ability to be that guy. He's a little bit of a grittier, like he's willing to drop the gloves for his teammates. He's done that before. But like he's not there yet, right?
Yeah. I think I said this last time. He hasn't grown into his body yet. Like he still needs to put on a little bit of muscle.
Yeah.
And, I mean, even still, like he's a decent skater, but whenever I watch him play, sometimes there's like times where I'm like, he doesn't look. It looks like sometimes he hasn't skated before in his life on the ice. I don't know. It's like he's kind of like starfishing out there with his arms out off to the side of his stick, and his legs are spread out like a baby giraffe getting up for the first time. And it's like this guy. I mean, it's so spastic with this guy. Of like he can be your best player some nights, and the other nights he could just be this guy where you're just like, why is this guy? This guy's an NHL hockey player right now, and we've seen more of the latter with him so far this season. And he's young, so you still gotta give him time to grow. But I think a lot of the weight of it comes into he just got a 7-year contract. He's expected to be a top 2 forward on this team. So he has that little bit of a pressure on himself, but like I said, I think he's only like 22, 23 years old. So
yeah, he's still young. Like
yeah,
he was only, we forget about it because he was kind of the play driver for the kid line last year. He was only 1 year older than Quinn and Peterka.
Yeah, and they're in their 20s. So yeah, he's still a young guy. So he's still learning the game. And I think, having this time to watch from the press box, maybe this will give him a little bit more insight of how to play the game a little bit more. And then, maybe hit the weight room a little bit more. He's not a small guy, but hey, weight on your body.
He's not a player I worry about in the long run, but during the short term, this has been tough.
Yeah. So we got Tom asking the question, who has been best in net so far this season? Sam, I'll leave that for you.
My personal answer to that is Comrie. I'm really sad to see him end up on the IR because I thought he was playing really well until even in the game that he got hurt. Like I thought it wasn't great, the 2 goals he let in, but I thought he was playing competently. And he was playing exactly at the level that we were talking about at the beginning of the season, where we need a player who plays consistently and like average. Like we don't need someone stealing games every once in a while. We just need a consistently average goalie. And I think he was doing that a little above average. And it was helpful, and we were winning games with him in the net. And now he's on IR, so I don't know when he's coming back, but I hope, unlike last year, he comes back and continues playing at the level that he did at the beginning of the year. I don't know if you remember, but he kind of started as a starting goalie last year and was great through a few games. I think he stole us a game on the road trip in Calgary where it was so clear we should have lost, like maybe even more so than the one that we won in Philly here.
Yeah.
And then he got injured, and we all know the rest of his season didn't play out exactly as you'd plan. But I hope that that's not going to be a repeating story this year.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say the same thing. Comrie's probably been our best goalie. And I think it's just, like you said, you don't need a guy that's going to win you games. You just need someone who's going to be average. And I think his personality helps soon that he's kind of, he lets things roll off the back. He usually has a funny sense of humor whenever we see him on the interviews. And he's just, between the 2 goalies that we have right now, Devin Levi, he's a rookie, so I'm not going to delve too deep into his personality. But UPL, you could definitely tell, like, the ebbs and flows of the games kind of affect his confidence, and that's something that he has to work on this season. On a ranking of the 3, I would say I put Comrie 1, UPL 2, and Levi 3. What do you think?
I fully agree with your sentiment. I think that at times Levi has shown what we'd like to see, and then like even through just the course of the same game, it can be like, oh, he's still a rookie goalie. Like, by the way, a young rookie goalie.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think he's only 20 years old at this point, and to put all the weight on him to be the future franchise goaltender is kind of tough to do that right now.
Goalies just develop later, and I think people need to understand that. Like even the elite goalies, Vasilevsky, I think, kind of really broke into the league at 24. And if you're curious, that's where Luukkonen is now. So if you don't expect him to be an elite goalie,
but even he had Ben Bishop ahead of him, and Bishop was having a solid season. He was like almost a Vezina goaltender at that time too. Like he was helping lead the Lightning to the playoffs at that point, and then they couldn't afford his contract, and Vasilevsky took over.
Yeah.
Sabres don't have that type of goaltender in the front right now. So, I mean, these guys are kind of learning on the fly. Even Comrie, he's a young guy too.
Comrie's like he's approaching 30 now. He's like
28.
He's 28.
He's 28. I mean, but he's young in his like goaltender career because I don't think.
Yeah. You get the late bloomers, the people who really figure it out later in their career. I think Tim Thomas really only started showing that he was a great goalie at like 30.
Yeah, he did.
So,
Yeah, I remember that because it was him and Miller, and I'd be like, "What the heck? Why is this 30-year-old goaltender,
right?
playing is the starting goaltender for Team USA at some point?" So yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, we have a couple more questions out there. So Bills fan, California, why is it we're so bad at faceoffs? One, that's a huge disadvantage, and it seems to be that way every game. Um, I
No,
I
he
totally.
adds up. He follows with, just don't understand how he can be so bad at that stat when these guys play hockey their whole life.
I mean, that's a good question. That's something I've noticed, especially in the when we're in the offensive zone, is that we tend to lose these faceoffs. And I think I was seeing last game was Reinhardt taking
Reinhardt.
some faceoff? No, Skinner. Skinner was taking some faceoffs.
Yeah,
And
so Skinner, when he's playing in the offensive zone, will take a fair amount of faceoffs. It's a handedness thing.
yeah,
They just seem to prefer to do faceoffs by like handedness and by committees. So that's maybe the issue for why we don't have great faceoffs is that we don't have a great faceoff taker just as an individual. Like
you don't have a Paul
we
Goff
because we're playing by committee, you don't have one guy for every line taking all the faceoffs and really just like getting the repetitions in. So maybe it's like an inconsistency thing.
Yeah.
But I don't really understand the mechanics of what makes a specifically good faceoff taker. We know Patrice Bergeron was
Yep.
one of the best in the game at it at like 63%. Even then, that number doesn't really. I don't think that number sways a game too much. So I don't get too worried about the faceoff stats. It's tough, and you definitely want to see like if you're on like the penalty kill or the power play, you want to see us win faceoffs because that kind of matters more. But I don't think in general that the faceoff wins correlates directly to actually like game wins, but it would be helpful.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of I listen to a lot of other hockey podcasts, and there's not a lot of weight put into face-off percentage, is what I've noticed. So it does seem like though that the Sabres are losing a majority of like important face-offs that they should probably have winning.
Yeah.
And the more that you see it, the more that it sticks out. What you do to change that, I don't know, because they
I
have
think
so
you
much.
just have to practice it, right? I wonder if
I
that's
guess
part of
so.
like I wonder if Don just thinks that there are more important things. If he like has the same information that the stats folks have, and it's just like, you know what, faceoffs don't have any correlation to or
Yeah.
have like a minimum correlation to like production. Maybe he's just looking at that and saying, we don't need to ever practice faceoffs. You guys will do it in games or whatever, or like in practice when we're scrimmaging. But yeah, maybe that's what it is. Maybe they're just not practicing the faceoffs.
Yeah, and maybe like you said, I don't think Granado maybe puts a lot of value into that right now at the moment. But hell, I mean, you have some guys that made NHL careers off of it. Look at Paul Kostad; he got that contract from Nashville just for winning winning faceoffs, and he literally would only play on the power play just for his faceoffs, nothing
Yeah,
else. He wasn't much of a
we
goal
had
scorer.
we had during the Kruger years, we had Cody Eakin, who
Yep.
was our big faceoff taker. We put him in like special team situations. He'd get overtime time to take the faceoffs.
Yeah.
So like, but I can remember more times where it hurt us to have Cody Eakin on the ice than it was like helpful that he won the faceoff for us. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, I just don't know. I don't think that you can. I would rather have Tage Thompson at his 36% faceoff win rate than Cody Eakin at his I think it was roughly like 56, which is like elite
Yeah.
faceoff rate. It's just hands down. Like I don't think it matters too much, especially if the guys who would be taking your face-offs are like gonna be these Cody Eakin type players. So
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, you just have to expect somebody. I think Middlestat has been having a pretty decent season with the faceoffs percentage so far.
yeah, I think
Um,
he's been okay.
yeah, and he's been finding himself more into the top penalty kill as well, or now power play as well. So I mean, it's just something that they're going to have to work on. I don't know what else you can say. You already have the skilled players there. I don't think you're going to bring in anybody just for faceoffs. That's
Yeah.
kind of just a waste of a contract and a waste of a spot. We're having some of those guys do that. But I mean, You just gotta take what you can only take so much. And
They just scored.
they did.
Yeah.
I'm about like probably a full minute behind you, I guess, because
Well, I'm sorry to have spoiled it for you. Yeah, now you get to live the horror. It's Brady Shea. Someone please tell that man how to spell the name Shea.
Let's see.
Hate
All
seeing it
right.
on the score sheet. Sketchy.
Long defensive zone possession, and
it's Orlov had an assist on that. We talked about Orlov in the last show and how he's been having a disastrous year. That honestly, that's just a nice play. Like that's tough, but
I mean, that's kind of how I wish the Sabres had more offensive zone possession time like that in their games, where they're controlling the puck more.
Last year we were definitely like heavily a transition team where like most of our offense came off transition, and this year I don't think we've done too much to change that, and we were getting less transition. But
yeah, and I think it's another thing to talk about too, and when it comes to our power play as well. They actually Rob Ray talked about it during the Maple Leafs game with the 1-3-1 system that we're working at: 1 forward in front of the net, 3 in the middle, 1 defenseman in the back. These teams are kind of figuring out that they don't really have to do much to stop that. I mean, they kind of stay in the triangle and they can fit around that. And maybe it was Baran. I don't know who. I think it was more Baran who talked about this, where you had kind of switch it back up, go to 2-2-2-2-1, where you have 2 forwards behind the net, 2 forwards in front of the net, and the defenseman in the back. That's going to give you more opportunities to cycle the puck more. Because right now, I mean, like you said, a lot of their goals are coming off of transition. You're not seeing a lot of plays being set up in the offensive zone, and that's something I think Granato's going to have to change up. I mean, they have to start getting more offensive zone possession time to be able to be a more productive offense, and that can translate into the power play as well. Just because they're scoring, I think, like we've talked about with Tuck, a lot of his goals last season came off of the transition and just scoring at weird angles. And he's kind of not having success like that this year. And even like a lot of Tage Thompson's goals, I mean, this year as well, they're coming off of the transition. He stole that puck. We'll go over that in the Maple Leafs game, where he basically stole the puck on the penalty kill and scored a shorthanded goal himself. But I mean, you have the skill, you have the ability to score. A lot of Tage's shots that are coming from the circles aren't going in right now. They have to do something to switch that up. What? I don't know. I'm not.
Dahlin scores. Kind of did it all for himself. That was really impressive. Like you're gonna want to take the opportunity to watch this, because Dahlin really took he was saying he was looking at the power play and saying, man, this isn't working, and just said, I'll do it myself there with both the break-in and the shot. So we don't need to set up in the zone if we do it on the transition on the power play.
I mean, I guess so. You can't continue this all year, but yeah. All right. It's a bad angle goal, but hey, it got it and it works.
So we're back in it.
It sounds familiar to the the Maple Leafs game. So before we go into the Maple Leafs game, though, let's go ahead and let's get back to the chat right now.
Bill continues with face-off percent is talked a lot about by announcers and scorekeepers. So there is something to be said about its value in a game.
Yeah, and I agree with that. There is some value for that as well, because, if you're in a penalty kill situation in your defensive zone, you definitely want to win the puck. Or even when you're in the offensive zone and you want to set up a play, especially on the power play, you should be winning those face-offs. The problem is right now, and I think Bill mentioned it too, this is something that's been going on for years with the Sabres. What they can do now to change, I guess guys are just going to have to practice it. Is it like free throws in basketball where you just keep on taking face-offs after practice and eventually it clicks in? But then it's kind of like the counterintuitive thing where it's like, okay, well, if I'm bad at face-offs and you're bad at face-offs and we're taking face-offs against each other, are we getting any better? So who are they going to take face-offs against? I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the solution is. These guys have been centers for a while, but how much they can do to change it at this point, I don't know. I don't know what we can do to change face-off. So I just don't think Granado really cares enough about it right now. I think the biggest thing this season was coming in was setting up working on the team defense. So yeah.
Again, with the importance of face-offs, like, yeah, it's nice to win possession off the draw, but plays will go like multiple minutes between face-offs. Like after the first 10 seconds or 20 seconds or whatever, I don't think that you can put it on the face-off, right? Like it just is. It is what it is. Continuing with the chat, I got my brother Pete saying hi. Hi, Pete. I'm on a podcast.
Peter Patter Morgan. All right.
And then we got the new school guys not appreciating face-offs. New game, I guess. And honestly, me personally, I'll take that on the face. Yeah, I don't put too much stock in face-offs. I'll be just honest. We've already talked that point to death. But yeah. They are what they are. They might be helpful in special team situations or in rare cases, like if you're trying to score with a small amount of time left. But then Bill disagrees and says it's not a new game when face-offs are concerned. Yeah, you got anything to add to this one? Because I've already made my stance on face-offs.
No, I'm kind of in the middle where it's just like there's part of me where it's just like there's how much is a face-off win going to make a difference? I don't know. From a lot of the things I've listened to a lot of hockey podcasts, and even after the Whistle guys even talk about it too, about face-offs. And both of those guys, old school guys, they really don't give a crap about face-off percentage, and they play the game. So, I don't know. Would you like them to win more face-offs? Yeah, of course. They should be better than they are right now. How much of a difference is it going to make? I just don't know. I don't know. I played mostly defense in my career, so I couldn't tell you too much about how much. I don't know how to fix a face-off, to be honest with you. And then Mike saying he was pretty good back in the day with face-offs, and I'd take a hometown discount. Just put me in on the power play. All right. If you want those
somebody needs to give Don Mike's number because I think we got our guy. I think we really do.
Yeah.
Well, you can be our Eakin. You play like 6 minutes a night, and it's just taking face-offs and then sprinting to the bench.
Yeah. So we'll kind of move on to the next game after that. We face the Leafs. So I think, like myself and like a lot of Sabres fans, after that Flyers game, we're kind of thinking we're gonna get shit pumped right now. We're facing one of the best offensive teams in the league, and we're going to be, and I'm sure I was thinking on the top of my head before the game too, I'm like, Matthews or Martyrs. One of those two are just going to just pile it in on us. Right. So, and one of those guys did. Matthews had another hat trick against us. That was 11 goals for the season for that game, I believe. And the guy is one of the best goal scorers in the game. I wouldn't say he's one of the best players in the game, but he's definitely one of the best goal scorers in the game. So that's kind of what you expected. When it comes to the game overall, Sabres did end up winning. Final score was 6-4, I believe, Sam.
It was 6-4. Yep.
I forgot to write down those stats.
Do you want our goal scorers if you don't have the stats?
I do have that. I have Tuck having 2 goals. One of the goals being shorthanded. A lot of people were reminded of the Las Vegas goal that he had, or not shorthanded, empty net. Empty net. We also had Peterka continuing his point streak with a goal and an assist. We also had Skinner, Thompson, and Greenway each with a goal. And then Middlestat, Clifton, Ryan Johnson, Power, and Olofsson all with an assist during that game. Ryan Johnson, that being his first point of his NHL career. So overall, what were your takeaways of the game?
Yeah, so the thing that I would just like to note, because it was the most interesting to me, is that this was the 4th game in a row, I believe, that a Sabre made their season debut. And this time it was Ryan Johnson.
Yep.
And I thought he looked great.
Yep.
That on Skinner's goal, the slap shot goal, I think that was his stretch pass.
Yep.
That was a great offensive instinct looking up the ice to be able to see Skinner streaking down the wing there. Got it to him without having Skinner break stride. And then defensively, he just like plays a more mature game than I would have expected. And I think I've noticed it in this game currently going on too. Like he looks good, and currently he's playing on the top line top pair with Rasmus Dahlin,
Yeah.
and he does not look that out of place. So I think that's really encouraging for me. So he was a player I was really watching closely just because it was his debut. But yeah, he was a standout for me that game. So
yeah, I mean, he played in college. He played college hockey, and college hockey has changed so much since. I mean, for the past 10 years. So the last time I was in college, last time you went to college, it was kind of like a death sentence type of thing. It's like, oh shoot, I couldn't make it through juniors. All right, I'm going to have to go into and play college hockey.
right.
And really the college hockey programs weren't really developing players at a high rate.
Gross would be so upset to hear you say that.
Well, I'm saying from 10 years ago. Now it's a completely different game. I mean, now guys are coming out of juniors and they're 20 years old. They're playing as like 21, 22, 23, 24-year-olds, or even 25-year-olds. You're having older players in college hockey right now. So you're playing a high level of competition as an 18-year-old in college hockey. And I mean, Ryan Johnson, he played at Minnesota, so he's seen some of the best players in the league, whether it be the Michigan team or, Boston teams as well. I mean, he was facing pro level competition in college. And so I'm not surprised that he took on well when it came into playing in the NHL on his first game. I don't think he's going to need much seasoning in the AHL. I think when I was listening to WGR, it's what would you rather have from Johnson once Samuelson gets better? Would you rather have him go back down to the AHL and keep working on his pro game? Or would you rather have him see him as your 7th D?
Yeah, I think, honestly, currently, like 1-to-1, Ryan Johnson is better than Jacob Bryson. If I never have to see Jacob Bryson in a Sabres uniform again, and it's because he was sent down to keep Ryan Johnson here, that works perfectly for me. If Samuelson comes back and he's perfectly healthy and we still have a logjam, we've got 7 or 8 defensemen if you consider Bryson. Send down Bryson is my first instinct, but also Clifton can be our 7th.
Yeah.
I think currently, from what I've seen, I prefer Clifton. Or not Clifton. I prefer Johnson in our bottom pair could be Johnson and Johnson, or you could move Yoki Haru down, give the treatment that we were kind of hoping for at the start of the season, where you get Yoki Haru onto the third pair because we found someone who we can pair with Power for more minutes. And so that would be helpful, maybe. Although I think Yoki Haru has played pretty well. I'm more concerned. Again, Power kind of stands out more for the mistakes he's made. But I don't know. He's clearly doing something well enough because he's like our highest plus minus player right now on the stat sheet. So really? I think so.
Okay. So, I mean, I agree with that sentiment. If you're going to keep Ryan Johnson up, he's going to have to be in the lineup. I don't think you're going to put him as your 7th D. That's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't think you can keep him as a 7th D. But I think he's might be better than Clifton. Like from what I've seen. Obviously, small sample size. Like when we were talking about Bryson last week, every game that Bryson played in, the goalie got a shutout. Small sample size, right?
Yeah.
So, we will have to see more from Johnson before we can make the final verdict. But from what I've seen, I would take him over Clifton.
Yeah. And I think Clifton's used to playing that 7th D as well. I mean, he did that in Boston for years. So that's something that he's used to. So, yeah, I don't see anything wrong in Johnson's game. If he can keep up right now, they're just showing Dahlin's time, 20 minutes so far in this game.
Yep.
If he can keep up with that pace, I'd be surprised. So maybe, like you said.
I mean, Johnson's not getting any of the special teams time. Right
yeah.
Now. So, like, that's less time than
so probably around, like, 12 minutes in the game.
Maybe 16.
Yeah. So, I mean, heck, if he can keep up with that workload, that's fine. I mean, he's not super young. Yeah, he's 22 years old, but he's been playing hockey for the past 4 years and playing at a high level for Minnesota. So yeah, keep him going. I mean, I don't see any point to sending him down to AHL unless you decide he's going to be your 7th D. Then I'd rather see I'd rather see Bryson just eat that time than have Johnson
Right.
not play. I'd rather him continue playing. Besides that, what else stuck out to you in that game?
I thought that despite letting in 4 goals, I thought that Levi played a pretty good game. I think he did well early to keep us in it when maybe there was a little pressure and our goals weren't coming in, and then like kind of the dam broke. But I still think he was playing well. I think the 8.57 isn't great, but
yeah,
I thought he had a comfortable game.
I mean, it's kind of been a common theme with him so far this season where I don't know what his average is, but I feel like he's always hovering around 4 goals a game. And that's a little bit of a concern for me if everyone was considering him to be the starting goaltender.
I mean, that's why we've ranked him as the 3rd goalie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and that's what I was going to bring back to the situation right now where I'm like, all right, maybe this guy is going to be our 3rd goaltender right now just because he doesn't have the experience of playing in the pros.
Right.
I don't know what people in the chat are thinking right now when it comes to the goalies, but let us know. But yeah, I mean, he's going to have to go through the ebbs and flow of the season. I mean, I think there was a lot of false hope that came to Levi at the end of last season where people were like, oh my God, this guy, he's going to be the savior of the team next year. And now people are feeling like they got sold on, false goods right now.
Right.
But and that's not coming from all Sabres fans. I'd say that's coming from fans that are loosely watching the team, if not just bandwagoners. Right. But, obviously you want to see a little bit less goals given up, but you're facing Toronto and you're facing 3 guys who are just offensive weapons when it comes to Marner, Nylander, and Matthews. But to talk about the Maple Leafs, that's kind of all they've got. I mean, the rest of their team is just kind of not good. I mean, we saw your boy Reeves out there. I know you love him.
He had like a good possession and like threatening zone time against us, and I was like, well, shucks. Now I can't like talk about. Now I can't dunk on him because he actually played a fine game against us.
I mean, he was decent. He really wasn't doing anything that would be like, get off our players type of thing. Just calm down. I mean, he played a respectable game, but he still looks slowed out there. Yeah. You really didn't see much from Max Domi. I mean, he was kind of out there, but he wasn't throwing his body around like you expected. And I would say the same thing Bertuzzi too. And Bertuzzi's kind of in a hot water when it comes to the Maple Leafs right now. He's got the hire of the team just because he was laughing at Marchand during their game. I think it was the night before or 2 nights before.
Oh, did I lose my internet? Or Timmy, are you gone? I have no idea. I think we might have lost Timmy. So I'm going to try and see what's going on, but I will just keep talking. Oh, are you back?
I am back. I don't know what just happened. Okay. So
I don't know.
I think I just lost my internet. No, that.
Okay.
It might have been me because I just got a bunch of emails. So I must have just lost my internet for a second.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was worried that could have been me, and I started rambling, but as it turns out, they probably all just heard me rambling. But yeah, great. Awesome. So you were talking about, before you cut out, you were talking about the Leafs and I think Bertuzzi kind of being in hot water.
Yeah, so and then I went on to their defense. I mean, really, you look at their defense, you have Morgan Riley, and you don't really have anybody after that. You have Joe Darno. Like, I mean, the guy's like 30, in his mid-30s. I mean, if he's going to be your number 2D, then what the heck? I don't know. And it's the way that they built their team is kind of vicarious because they just kind of threw big contracts at guys, hoping that would be the future of their team, and it really hasn't worked out well for them. So I think that's something to note for the Sabres. But besides that, this isn't the Maple Leafs podcast, so we'll go ahead and we'll pass that. I mean,
they get enough coverage. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, after the game, I was looking at Buffalo Sabres, Toronto Maple Leafs highlights, and all I saw were Maple Leafs podcasts all below it after the game. And I watched a couple just to eat up some tears. So besides
are you a Steve Dangle watcher?
I saw that meltdown. I'm not a watcher, but I saw people talking about that on the Buffalo Sabres Reddit, and I hopped right over to that.
An interesting thing that he mentioned actually in that podcast was the Sabres beat the Maple Leafs during that game by every conceivable metric.
Yeah.
Except for face-offs. But we see how that correlates, yeah? So, like, we beat them in rush chances. We beat them in just chances in general, high danger chances. We beat them in, like, I think we beat them in checks, which is rare for the Sabres. We beat them in goals. Like, I'm pretty sure almost any conceivable metric that you could have looked at. And he was listing off a bunch of them. Like, we dominated that game against the Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
And that's like, I don't normally watch Steve Dangle, but I think I also saw people talking about it on the subreddit. And I was looking at Steve his little bit about the stats, and I was like, huh, interesting. I would not have known that if like he didn't bring that to light. But yeah, we dominated the Leafs by like any counting stat that you could think of, except for faceoffs.
And that's a conversation that we had earlier about faceoffs. So I'm not going to go back into that. But I mean, that wasn't anything that you would expect out of the Sabres versus the Maple Leafs. But I think that kind of shows you, the depth that the Sabres have when it comes to their team, especially when it just comes to, secondary scoring, because not only, Tuck has 2 goals that game, but I think that I've kind of been hinting at it. Peterka's on a hot streak right now.
Peterka's looked great. Oh, by the way, during the Philadelphia games, especially the second one where it really felt like we were struggling to get anything going, Peterka would not quit. His motor was going that whole game, even when everyone else was kind of like, I don't know, just like
mailing it in.
Yeah, that game was over for those guys, but Peterka was still skating. He was really willing to get into the kind of dump and chase mentality that we maybe needed to spark some offense against the Philly, and he was getting into gritty areas. He was chasing pucks. He was doing everything that you'd want him to do. That was a bad outcome for us, obviously, but no one can blame him for that one.
Yeah, I mean, and he was kind of the afterthought last year when he came up with Quinn. Everyone was expecting Quinn to be the player that, it was almost like people are kind of looking at Quinn and being like, okay, this is going to be the next franchise guy that we have on too. He's the next guy coming up. And I'll admit too, like Peterka, I didn't know too much about him just because he came over for Europe. I think he played the year before with Quinn, and he had a pretty decent season. The second year is kind of where he took off too. But, selfish me, I kind of looked at the first round guy and expected him to be there, kind of be the guy there, and Quinn, but Quinn's out this season. And did Quinn play in the Worlds this offseason? Do you remember?
I believe he did, and it was to a just kind of meh standard. Like, I think he got some points. I think he looked fine, but he was also playing on a pretty loaded team, so I'm not sure he was getting like the amount of ice time that Peterka may have gotten. Because for Germany, Peterka was the guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and that's once I saw what Peterka did during the Worlds, I was kind of like, oh, well, this guy actually can be something. And then just to see that, I think he was the first Sabre to score this season too, I believe, right?
I believe he was the first Sabre to score what was it score first in 2 consecutive years.
Yeah.
Since I don't know, I want to say 2005.
Yeah. So I mean, there's something there, and that's a testament to just the Sabres in general of how much of a depth that they have. That this guy originally was playing. No, he played on the second line this year, but was playing on the third line last year. So, there's a lot more to this team than we actually realize. And I mean, we still have guys in the reserves down the Amherst and even outside of that as well. Was there anyone else that kind of stuck out to you in that game at all?
No, I felt like it was kind of a win by committee. Like our overall game was substantially better. You see us get destroyed in Philadelphia, and then everyone comes out to play in that next game. Obviously, there were the few standouts, but I do think that was a that was a team win. They really came out and they played and they got their goals.
Yeah. So I'm kind of just watching.
Yeah, we're down to like the last minute. It's 2-2. So if we end up a little bit distracted, that might be why. But anyway, we got through Toronto. We may as well, while we're looking at this game, sum up what we've seen so far in Carolina.
Yeah.
It was not maybe the boat race that we thought it could have been going into it. I think that after how we played in give us the play-by-play. After how we played in Philadelphia, we were I think Don marked this one on the calendar a little bit, looking at how Carolina last year was better defensively than maybe they have been this year, and said, how are we going to play against this team that's defensively sound? And we're seeing a lot more dump and chase, kind of like dive and dunk. We're really getting into the corners after dumping it because they're good at stuffing the line, which was an issue against the Flyers again.
Yep.
And I kind of like the sentiment. It shows that Don's like looking at maybe what our weaknesses and is asking himself, what can we do? How can we adjust? And he picked a specific game. He's looking at the Carolina Hurricanes. He's like, they also do this thing. And he ended up, he ended up having us just dump it a lot and chase. And I don't think that that's necessarily a terrible thing. It worked out okay for us this game. It's 2-2 right now.
Yeah.
We're kind of holding our breaths a little bit as we're taking a defensive zone draw, which we all know that we're really good at the faceoffs. We've discussed that. This is where it matters, right? You got 16 seconds left, defensive zone draw. These are where it matters, because I don't think that you're going to really have an opportunity to turn it up the ice if you don't win this draw. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. We lost the draw. It got out of the zone anyway, though. And it looks like it's just going to kind of
so much farther than ahead of me. That's insane.
Yeah, you might want to refresh your stream. And it looks like the clock's just going to be run out, and we're probably going into overtime. Thank you for that shout. So yeah, have you noticed up to this point? Have you noticed anything specific that you want to talk about this game? Obviously, we watched the third period together, so like that's maybe we haven't had the best opportunity to be watching the game because we've been talking. But
I mean, I think you hit it on the head. Is that Granato actually pointed out in this game? You're going into a defensive-minded team. I think it's kind of been counterintuitive. I think in the years past, you're more defensive. Going into this game, we looked at the stats last week, and I think they had more goals for than against. And well, obviously, if they're winning, but I mean, their goals for was significantly higher than we're going to think, and their goals against were significantly higher than
from what I've seen stats-wise and from watching this game. I think that might have been more of a goaltending thing than a defense thing. So I think the principle still applies where you're facing like a stout defense. But honestly, Antti Ranta's played pretty well this game.
Yeah. But I mean, it's nice to actually see Buffalo coach adjust the game style.
It really felt like
I'm sure Jake
Don's been out-coached in in game. So I definitely resonate with that sentiment. Like the adjustment is nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice for one of our coaches to do adjustments here. Anyways, to continue on to something else. No, I mean, it's, like we said, we kind of looking at the stats last week, we're kind of expecting a boat race, but obviously, Carolina's defensive sounding team. I don't think that was anything that this is nothing new to the Sabres versus Carolina teams, where it's going to be a low scoring game. You're going to have to take advantage of your chances, which the Sabres have. I mean, I don't know. The one adjustment, like I mentioned earlier, is they have to somehow beating the opposing team in the neutral zone and setting it up in the offensive zone. That's something that the Sabres are going to have to change. I mean, I don't know if do you go back to the early lockout days where they did the dump and chase type of thing, but do the Sabres have the speed for that? I don't think they really do. So, I mean, overall, though, they're playing a pretty solid game. I mean, this is where the team should shine right now in 3-on-3 overtime.
Yeah.
I don't think
we won the draw, by the way. I don't know if you're there yet.
Yeah, I just saw that. So Middlestat has the puck and just passes a Tuck. Am I at the right spot?
You're like 30 seconds behind.
Oh
Whoa,
my
Tuck
god.
took a shot.
All right,
Kind of
well,
a nice save by Ranta, but maybe not too dangerous. They're going the other way now. Carolina's got it coming into our zone. One hand on the stick. Luukkonen played it nicely. Oh. We did get scored on, but that was awkward. Yeah, I think maybe we can just, but as we're more watching, as the conclusion of this, maybe we just talk a little bit with chat, go over some of the stuff that has happened as we watch, and maybe talk about as we pay attention to the game. So mentioning that we got in the overtime, we got the point, so that's huge. We're at least staying NHL 500 here.
We got a point. We got a Podger on the show finally. So
Podger, yeah. Finally, we have it for you, Mad Chatter. We got the we lost 88. Martin Natchez.
I don't know who that is. Well, I'm kind of watching right now, so I'm guessing I'm getting like the all 22 of the game right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they look flat-footed right now. Owen Powers. I mean, yeah. I mean, the defense looked flat-footed. They didn't know what they were doing out there. I don't know what to say, but
yeah.
I mean, I haven't got a chance. Like I said during the show, I haven't got to watch too much of the game to actually respond. Did they get a penalty? What?
No, there wasn't a penalty going on. That was 3-on-3.
So what? But they had a time. They had a chance to change, right?
I don't know. It came back quickly after a tuck shot, but I wasn't exactly sure what was happening after that. But yeah, it seems like there's a little bit of chat about Power.
That's what they say. That's what they say. Power.
Give us your overall analysis on Owen Power.
I mean, he's not having the season that you expect out of a player like him. I mean, I don't. It's a battle between. This is literally his second season.
Right.
He is the first overall pick, but then what do you do? I mean, Rasmus Dahlin had a terrible first 3 seasons. Like, he was literally a bust at that point. So
yeah, but he was also playing for
a very bad
Granado,
team. Yeah,
as well. Granado made everyone bad. Let's not forget
Kruger,
that Skinner or Kruger. Sorry, yeah, Kruger.
Yeah.
Kruger made everyone bad. Let's not forget that Jeff Skinner was a 8-goal guy under Kruger, getting benched regularly. So.
Yeah. But I don't know what to say about Power. There's a lot of I could be nitpicky on things. I don't know what the chat thinks. I don't know what our guy Bill thinks. But I mean, he's been sticking out. I mean, he's kind of been sticking out with. I see him out on the ice for a lot of goals against.
And do you know what? A lot of the times the issue, it's one thing to be out on the ice for a lot of goals against. A lot of the times it feels like maybe he was in a position to have changed that outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I don't know.
And I think Bill said it right. Dahlin was labeled a generational player at the draft. Power was a number 1, but not generational. I think it was between him and Beniers. I mean, I think those two, they were talked about going 1-2, switching between the two. Would you rather have Beniers on the team, or would you rather have Power?
Beniers is going through a pretty bad sophomore slump as well right now. I'm pretty sure there's been talk in where's Seattle? I'm pretty sure they've been talking in Seattle about whether or not Beniers needs times in the AHL, which is for the season that he had last year. You would not maybe expect that, but apparently he's been atrocious. So
Okay.
yeah, I think I'd still stick with Power up to this point, and I think maybe I'm willing to just be like, you know what, sophomore slump, it happens,
Yeah.
and I'm not happy about it. I'm not looking at this and
No.
I'm like, I'm happy with how he's playing, but I, again, as Bill said, Power is young and will get better. It's one of those things. I'm not worried about the future of Owen Power. It's just one of
Yeah.
those things. I think it's frustrating. You go into this season and the expectation is playoffs.
Playoffs.
And again, we got people like, I don't know, Dylan Cousins and Owen Power, where you're not worried about what their future is. But if they're going to play like this, maybe like that expectation of playoffs becomes harder to achieve, right? You need these players. The assumption was that they would take a step up from where they were last
Yeah.
year. And if you're going to regress, again, I'm not worried about the future. They're going to be great players,
Exactly.
but it's frustrating. And I'm like, obviously, very frustrated with how this game ends. You have Owen Power right there, doesn't get his guy or doesn't like mark his guy, and the goal goes in. And we're seeing that maybe too often from him.
Yeah. And Bill said it right. Power's young and will get better. I mean, the problem is it's so. I've been preaching. You have to give patience at this time with players. So for me to get mad or angry about Power and his play right now, I mean, it's nitpicky, but like you said, this isn't the Sabres window is just opening right now. Like we're at the window, we got our hands at right on that wooden part to lift it up, but we're not lifting it up yet. We still have time to grow. I mean, yeah, the expectation is playoffs for the team this year, which I still believe that's totally possible, but it is on the expectation that players like Power and Cousins actually start picking it up.
Of course, the biggest one was Devin Levi. And again, super young guy. I don't worry about his future, but if the expectation is playoffs this year, maybe it's UPL and Comrie, right?
Yeah.
If Levi has to spend time in the AHL to mature his game, I don't think we should be upset about that.
No, not at all.
He doesn't give us the best chance at winning games, again, and same with Dylan Cousins and Owen Power, if they need time away from the ice, I don't think that we necessarily have a better replacement for those two right now. We probably do for Levi. But if it were so bad, like they're talking about with Berniers in Seattle, where you're like, maybe this guy needs to season his game, do that. If they're not currently giving you the best opportunity to win.
Yeah. And he was their 1C last year, right? Right?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe 2.
I mean, but to be totally honest with you, the Kraken kind of just happened. Well, that's a conversation that we're going to be getting into later about the Western Conference. But I mean, it was just a happenstance that they made the playoffs. I mean, I forgot who they beat. Was it they beat the Avalanche?
They beat the Avalanche, the reigning champs.
But the Avalanche were having a down year last year.
And everyone was injured by that time.
Yeah, but the Kraken really, they weren't a playoff team last year, to be totally honest with you. So I'm not really surprised. I mean, it stinks that Berniers is having the season that he is right now, and that's the luxury of having a guy on his rookie contract, is that you can set him down without subjecting them to waivers.
Yeah.
And I think, just to go back on the point that you said, the only player out of those three between Cousins, Levi, and Power, the one guy worried about his future is just Levi, and just because he's a goaltender and the confidence thing. So if you're going to bring him up to NHL and he's just going to get shelled every single game, probably bring him down to AHL and just kind of boost his confidence up and get some games underneath his belt. I don't want him sitting as a third goaltender and not getting games at all either. The only way he's going to develop is getting a lot more exposure to hockey and at a pro level too. But yeah, let's just go to the chat real quick. Besides that, Bill was saying I wanted Maddie at the draft real bad, but as it turns out, the Sabres have some really good players in AHL. The Sabres have a lot of offensive talent. It's kind of insane at this point. I mean, Oslin, I was just kind of looking over the Sabres prospects videos the other day, and they have a lot of guys. I mean, I don't think they really need any more offense. I don't know. It's kind of funny because we're going to be going into the Savoy situation right now too with Benson. I mean, they have a lot of offensive talent. I don't
Yeah.
know if they really need any more, but you can't in the draft just select defensemen because you need defense. You
Yeah.
should be selecting in a sport where you have a farm team system. You're going to have to pick the best player ever or
Yep.
best player available,
Especially at first overall. But I do think that, like, as we currently sit, yeah, I'd probably rather have Owen Power. I'd rather have another defenseman because, like, the farm team for our prospects is pretty good right now. And we're obviously seeing Rushek and Byro are up right now. Benson made the team quite unexpectedly. We're going to see Savoy make his debut soon. By the way, if Savoy made his debut in this game, we would have extended that streak to 5 for players making their season debut. We went Bryson, Biro, Rushek, Johnson, and then we would have had Savoy this game. But
and the Sabres going to have an interesting situation with that too, just because Savoy would have to he'd either have to sign on and play in the NHL or go back down or go back down to the WHL. And same with Benson. And I just don't. I mean, it stinks with the way that the juniors contract works. I mean, I don't want to see those guys going back to the Western Hockey League. I'd rather have those guys develop in the AHL at least. And I wish there could be a way that they could just would they have to give up a draft pick, right? The Sabres, if they ended up, is that how it works?
I do not know. But I do agree with your point in just the sense that, like, we see Matt Savoy get a point per game in the AHL.
Yeah.
I think actually his point streak ended on the last game. So, like, 5 out of 6. Benson gets NHL experience. And you're going to tell us that, like, if they're not just going to outright make the team, they have to go back to the like juniors. Like, that's kind of crazy. I don't know what the penalty is. I'm not sure if there necessarily is one. It might just be like you're not allowed to do this. Like, you might just not be able to play.
But the Kraken did a weird thing with Shane Wright last year where they extended him out until they got to the World Juniors. And then something happened. Then he was playing. I think he played for like a few games in the OHL, was back in the AHL. I don't know. It's just a weird thing. I mean, once you draft the guy, I mean, I'm sorry. You're the juniors. You're a development league for the NHL. The players should decide if they'd rather play up in the NHL or play down in the OHL.
It's just they're actually, like, not a development league for the NHL technically, and that's where
in
you
my
get
mind
into this.
They are.
Yeah, I know. Like, as an NHL fan, it's completely that, right? Like, you look at the juniors and you're like, it's a place for us to develop our prospects at a lower level than the AHL. But in actuality, they're their own independent business, and that's why the CHL agreement exists. Because if you're not taking their player to put them in the NHL, like, they still want that player, like, because they are an entertainment value. If they're like a high draft pick who could be playing in the A, what the Kraken did last year is similar to what we're currently doing with the conditioning stints and, like, just moving players around. I think we're going to see Benson in the AHL after he's recovered from his injury. So he's probably going to get the conditioning stint, and he's probably going to go out to I imagine Savoy and Benson probably ends up in juniors. So that's probably the plan for them.
Yeah.
But even with them gone, like, our farm system's still really strong because then we have Yuri Kulik is almost a goal per game in the AHL right now. I don't think that he's going to stay in the AHL forever. I think that our carousel of, like, AHL to NHL is going to be pretty wide open, as we've currently seen. We're making a lot of roster spots with Biro, Rusick, Savoy, and Benson all currently up right now. We're managing to, like, fill people in, but I think it's going to be just a second before we see Yuri Kulik up, and even Isaac Rosane has been outstanding. They're both over a point per game. So, I think that the plan going forward, at least I'd imagine, is that we see Benson and Savoy ship out to World Juniors, hopefully absolutely light it up there, and maybe they're going to end up back in juniors after that, and then we'll start seeing the other prospects make their debuts, and we'll see Rosine and Kulik.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. We'll go real quick. I think with our 3 stars of the week. So I'll let you go ahead and go first. I went first last time.
All right. So mine are kind of skewed towards the new players.
Yeah.
But that's okay. They I think earned it, even if they're the new, even if it's maybe a little biased. So my first one, or my 3rd star of the week, is Brandon Biro. Comes in, gets 2 goals, and I think technically he's at a goal per game pace this year because he hasn't played since those 2 goals, he played one more game after, and he got injured, so he's been off. But Brandon Biro got his 2 goals. I'm just going to take a moment. Thanks, Bill, for showing up. We hope to see you next week.
Yeah, join us next week.
So, again, Brandon Biro, third star. 2nd star, I'm going to give it to Ryan Johnson. I think he played really well in the game against the Leafs. And again, in this game, I think he also looked really good. Like, he just seems like a very confident player for someone who's really never played in the NHL before. He ends up getting that point for Skinner, or with Skinner. And that was a great pass, really stretching out the ice there, and just see the ability to see up the ice like that, I thought was really impressive. And then for my 1st star, I'm going to give it to Tage Thompson. He had that really good game against Philly, putting up the 3 points. And really, ultimately, I think he's been playing pretty good all year, but finally we see a little bit of offense coming in. Yeah. I am not sure how many points he had against the Leafs, but I think he had 4 points this week. So, like, the 4 points in 3 games, I don't have the exact score sheet for this game, but he had 4 points in 3 games, and then he added an assist in this game. So we'll say 5 points in 4 games this week, on top of the defense that he's built upon. I think he's been good all year, but now's the time I'm finally putting him in as the star of the week.
Okay, nice. So, yeah, I think this is the first week where we're going to have all 3 completely different.
That's awesome. Love to see the variety.
Yeah, so my 3rd star, 3rd star of the week is going to be Casey Middlestat. I mean, I think this guy's made my 3 stars every single week.
Yeah, that's a pretty consistent one for you.
Yeah, I mean, he just keeps on putting points up.
And he's
doing
it at 5-on-5 too. Like,
yeah, he's leading the league in 5-on-5 points, and then it's funny because Quinn Hughes is one of those players too. So, and the Hughes brothers, well, besides Jack right now, but
Casey Middlestat had an assist this game.
Okay, so he continues on his points.
He continues.
Streak. Yeah. And then my 2nd star of the week is going to be JJ Peterka.
Okay, I agree. I think he's been great.
I don't know what he had points in this week, but he had let's see real quick. He had an assist in the first Flyers game, and then he had another assist in the second Flyers game, and then he also had a goal and an assist in the Leafs game. So,
and you know what? Let's be honest here. That Tuck goal that was in the Carolina game, that was assisted by Peterka. Even though it's not on the score sheet, that was a Peterka assist.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's like I said, he's kind of on a hot streak right now. He's going to keep on going. And then my other side of the week is just going to go to Alex Tuck, just because, he's coming out. I think besides that second Flyers game, he had 2 assists in the first Flyers game, and he had 2 goals in the Leafs game. I mean, you can kind of see that he, like you said, he's been playing with an injury, but now he's starting to get himself going. He had that goal tonight as well. So, I mean, I think his season's going to be a turnaround. He's kind of going to be going up on a positive slope right now for the rest of this season. So, yeah, those are my 3 stars for the week. And I know that we kind of foreshadowed a little bit. We're going to kind of go over the Western Conference right now. And Sam, you wanted to talk about some teams out there.
Yeah, so there were some amusing things to talk about going on out west, so not too close to here. But we had with the Vegas Golden Knights, they were on a 20 consecutive game point streak dating back to March of last year during the regular season, of course.
Yeah.
And that got broken recently by the Anaheim Ducks. They went into the third period of that game up, I think it was 3-0. Maybe it was 2. And they lost the lead to the Ducks, who also are an interesting story because they've been good this year. They were a team that everybody had written off as like, they are going for the lottery. They're going for the lottery, but they have been really good this year. One of the interesting things from that team is Mason McTavish. I think that he's really kind of figured out kind of how to play at an NHL level and do that very well. He's just looked fantastic. There's also a defenseman for them, a rookie defenseman, who is currently one of the front runners for the Norris Trophy. And I'm trying to find what his name is. It's something Russian, so I'm probably going to butcher it once I do find it. But
it's not Labushkin, is it?
It's not Labushkin. So this guy has 8 points in 11 games. It's Pavel Mintyukov.
Huh.
And yeah, he has been lighting it up. He has been fantastic for the Anaheim Ducks. And again, that's a rookie defenseman. And I think he's it's not even like an old rookie. Like sometimes you have the Russians come in and they're like the 24-year-old rookies. You see that with Panarin. You see that with the guy in Kaprizov.
Yeah.
But this guy's 19. And he's, over half a point a game as a defenseman in a team that people thought was going to be garbage. That's an interesting thing going on in Anaheim. And it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep up the pace.
Do you think they can keep up the pace?
I don't know, because I've, out of curiosity, looked a little bit at I've watched one of their games, and they look good.
Really?
It doesn't feel fluky the way that they play it. Like
Zegras is having a down year though, right?
Zegras is not having the greatest year point production wise.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think that it's the end of the world because everyone else is playing pretty well. Ryan Strome has 11 points in 10 games. Mason McTavish, 13 points in 11 games. Frank Vetrano has 9 goals and 12 points in 11 games.
Okay.
Yeah, and then at the kind of near the bottom, Trevor Zegras has 2 points. And Jamie Drysdale, their other, up-and-comer, he's at point per game at 2, but he's only played 2 games.
How's Gibson look? What's his save percentage?
Gibson has been pretty good, but it's Lucas Dostal.
Really?
Who's really, I think, really looked better. Gibson is a 267 save percentage or 267 goals against average and 910 save percentage, and he has 2 wins and 3 losses. Dostal has 5 wins and 1 loss, and he's 280 goals against and 920 save percentage.
Huh.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a surprise. I really wasn't expecting that.
Also, Leo Carlson has 4 points in 7 games, so he's putting up a few points.
Okay.
But yeah, they're doing substantially better than I would have thought.
Then you kind of look over at the Oilers, and they're kind of in the struggle bus right now. I mean, that's everything that you're hearing throughout the league. I think that's one of the biggest stories is that the Oilers don't look like they're going to be a team to last too long this season. And I think there's another team that you wanted to talk about too.
Yeah, one that I think is particularly amusing, the San Jose Sharks. They are currently 0-10-1. So they've got 1 point in 11 games. And the fun thing about them that happened recently is they conceded 10 goals in back-to-back games for the first time since, or any team has done it in the first time since 1965 when the Boston Bruins did it. It's been 80 years or so, 60 years, sorry. That's ridiculous. How are they this bad right now? Surely they cannot actually be this bad. They have a minus 43 goal differential. That is almost impossible in 11 games. You're getting outscored 4 per game. It's crazy. They are so bad.
I mean, they're I mean, when Mike Queer took over that team needed to be imploded. I
Yeah.
mean, they had such just when they had like their cup runs and even just their steady playoff runs, they just had an old team between Pavelski and Thornton. I'm trying to think of who was the defense Brett Burns. Like they
They
just
had
had old
Carlson on that team as well.
Carlson was like a last chance chuck up. But I mean, that team needs to be imploded. It needs to be rebuilt again. And I mean, why not do it now? You have a guy in Max Celebrini that's going to be playing for Boston University. I think he's having insane stats right now on there. He's going to be the top overall pick next year. Might as well. You got to tank, man. I think the first thing you have to do is just to get better. Is you're gonna have to be a bad team. It's gonna take a while before we see the Sharks being competitive team again, like the Sabres. So, I mean, is it good for your fan base, especially a fan base in California, that you're this bad? No, not at
Yeah.
all. But I mean, if you can get some good star players out there, then heck, why not you do it? I mean, so far, yeah, I mean, celebrating with an eight game season, he has 8 goals and 6 assists and 14 points. I mean, all right, there's your guy. If you're gonna tank, you might as well tank for this kid.
Yeah.
And
it looks like they are going to tank, and I'm sure the Blackhawks will get their pick. Get the first overall.
Well, I hope not. I mean, there's some other stuff coming about the Blackhawks out now too, so it's like, oh,
yep. They're dealing with the more sexual harassment claims.
Yeah.
A teammate of Kyle Beach's, but honestly, I don't think that we should be the ones getting into that. We don't have all the information right now. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're going to be in some hot water again soon.
What'd you think of the Dadonov thing when it comes to Ottawa Senators? Do you think that the punishment for that was just, or was it too much?
So I know what the line of thinking is here because I've heard this.
Yeah.
Where it's the Ottawa Senators had a situation with Dadonov where they trade him to Vegas, and then I think Vegas tried to trade him somewhere else and was like, we don't have a trade list. They tried to trade him to Anaheim, I think it was. And they're like, he doesn't have a trade list. We can get rid of him. As it turns out, Ottawa told Vegas that that Dadonov didn't have a trade list or something. And in reality, Dadonov had a no trade list and Anaheim was on it. And Dadonov was like, nah, I don't want to go to Anaheim. And everyone was like, what? What's going on here? Yeah. And the league investigates it, finds out that it dates back to the trade that Ottawa made with Vegas, and Ottawa gets fined a first overall pick, was it?
Yeah.
Their next first overall pick. And then everyone's looking at Chicago and they're saying, well, they had like a sexual assault scandal and the only thing that happened was a slap on the wrist. And it was a pretty bad one, pretty public one.
Yeah.
And so everyone's looking at that and they're like, you know, you trade a player incorrectly, you lose your first round pick, you cover up years of sexual assault, and you get Connor Bedard as a reward. And first of all, I'd just like to let everyone know that the first round pick that Chicago would have lost would have been 2022.
Yeah.
So like they still would have gotten Bedard. That said, I do think that Chicago should have been punished more harshly.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know that I think Ottawa should have been punished as harshly as they would, and I feel bad for Andelauer, the new owner, because he bought that team and apparently didn't know about either of the scandals with is it Pinto, who had the gambling scandal?
Sports betting,
yeah. And then he didn't know that there was the ongoing investigation with the Dadonov trade. And so he bought the team, and then both of those things were revealed to him after the fact, and he's reasonably pissed. But I don't think that I do think that Chicago should have been punished more so than they were. And I don't think that Ottawa should have been punished nearly as much as they were. Like maybe a second round pick. It's a blunder. It definitely is.
Yeah.
But it's not so much so that like, I don't know. That feels like a lot.
Because is Dadonov still on the?
He's
The
in
Phoenix?
Dallas, I believe.
Okay, I mean, so they were still able to get rid of the contract. I mean, I don't know. I think a first round pick is pretty tough to give up for that. I mean, is it slimy? Yes, but for now, the new ownership to have to take the blunt of that stinks. I mean, it's a little bit of buyer's remorse, but still, it's like
But they
I don't
didn't
know
tell him about that. Like at the very least,
exactly.
let him know that that's going on. Like they're definitely favoring the seller, trying to get it,
Yeah, yeah,
just trying to get it moved.
exactly.
But
All right, so that's all we'll talk about on that. So the final thing that we're just going to have to go over is the next couple of games for the week. So on Friday, the Sabres play at home versus Minnesota at 7 p.m. Then after that, they'll play on Saturday at Pittsburgh at 7:30, and then next Tuesday, they play the Boston Bruins at 7 p.m.
I can let you know ahead of time. I will be at that game, so we're probably gonna have to
Perfect.
reschedule that one. I'm assuming we either do Monday or Wednesday. But
Let's do Wednesday. We'll
all
do
right,
Wednesday.
yeah,
Yeah, we'll do that right
perfect.
now. Yeah.
So for that one we'll be seeing you. We'll be seeing you Wednesday.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, besides that, I don't know Minnesota's record, but I know Pittsburgh. They're having a pretty down season right now. I think they're at, if not last
Yeah,
or second last
they are
in the
4 and
Metro,
6, last in the Metro with 8 points. 3 points
which
behind the Blue Jackets and Flyers. They got 2 games in hand though, so like they're not
yeah,
doing too terribly if they win those games in hand.
yeah. I mean, it's an older team. I don't know what I mean. It's kind of what I expected, even though we lost them in the preseason. But I think the Sabres should be able to handle Pittsburgh pretty soundly in that game. And then Boston. I mean, they have one loss and they're at the top of the Atlantic, and that's another one of those defensive teams. I mean, the Sabres are they're gonna have to deal with these teams between just in the Atlantic division. You're gonna have to deal with, or not the Atlantic, just the Eastern division. You have to deal with the New York Islanders, the New York Rangers, the Carolina Hurricanes, the Boston Bruins. You're just going to have to get used to facing defensive teams, and you're going to have to learn how to beat those teams and kind of get high, kind of score more goals than they did tonight. Those 2 goals that they have. Do you know too? I haven't. I was just going to click on the Wild right now. Do you know too much about the Wild?
So they're 4-5-2 right now, but they're actually about to be 5-5-2. They're currently beating the Islanders 4-2. Their team has kind of been a little up and down. They're currently led by Matt Zuccarello, who has 12 points. Eriksson Ek has 11, and Kaprizov has 11. Their goaltending has been suspect at best, with Philip Gustafsson playing the lion's share of games. He's 2-3. I'm assuming he's about to be 3-3-1 with a 489 goals against average and a 871 save percentage. So he's been taking the majority of the games. Marc-Andre Fleury has better numbers, but has been taking less games. I assume it's because he's older now.
Yeah.
But Marc-Andre Fleury has 2-2-1 record, and he is 283 save percentage with 892. So really, that's one of the ones where you're going to look at them and you're going to want to be taking advantage of them defensively. You're going to want to be taking advantage of the goaltending.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the ones. They're probably the most likely to be a boat race in this upcoming week. They're going to be the ones. I mean, maybe Pittsburgh, but they're going to be looking to outscore their problems, and they have problems.
Yeah.
So that's maybe a good. They could be a good spark plug for us on
Exactly.
offense. Get us rolling. A team where we don't have to worry about how hard it's going to be to break the offensive line or the like zone.
Yeah, the neutral zone. Yeah.
Yep. So that could be nice to see for a change.
Yeah. I mean, I feel right this week. I mean, I guess the theme for the next coming show is just for the Sabres. You gotta use these next 2 games as bounce back games and just get something going. I mean, the Wild are down right now. Get back in the offensive style hockey, put a lot of goals up. The Penguins are down. Take advantage of that. Get the easy W's here while you can, because you're going to be coming up against the Boston Bruins, and we all know their style of game. I mean, I'm going to have to watch Marchand, and I hate watching Marchand.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if Nucci is even playing for them. I mean,
yeah.
The craziest thing that I heard, and
Lucic has played 4 games.
I mean, what a waste of a contract.
Yeah.
The craziest thing that I heard today is one day after the Bertuzzi incident with the Maple Leafs, where Bruins fans were fully convinced that Bertuzzi wants to come back to the Bruins.
Right.
And I was just sitting there. I'm like, Bertuzzi gets often injured. I mean, he had one solid season with the Red Wings. I mean, why do you want this guy back? Like, who cares? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can't stand Boston fans. I mean, I have to put up with Pats fans, and I have to put up with Bruins fans. And it's
you're right in the thick of it, too.
I mean, I have to deal with the smugness of them, and I'm just like, okay, just get over yourselves. The season is not going to go like last season. Your guys are going to collapse at some point, and I'm ready for it.
The thing that makes me hopeful that they're going to collapse is that they're a team powered only by David Pastrnak and goaltending. Mm-hmm. So Jeremy Swayman has six games played, 6 wins, and he has a 149 goals against average and a 9.52 save percentage. Like, that is spectacular and not something you can keep up through a whole year. A 9.52 save percentage. And again, David Pastrnak, 17 points. Next closest player is Brad Marchand at 11. It is they're denying goals through goaltending alone, and they're still a stout defensive team. That didn't really change. But again, they did lose a lot of their top end talent in Bergeron and Krejci. Those are gone. So you do have those gaps still at center. But it's goaltending right now. It's goaltending that's really elevating them to another level. Yeah. And it's David Pastrnak making up for the rest of it. Like, that's not a team that's really, other than Pastrnak, they have an 11-point scorer. They have, and then it's 8 and below. So it's really, really, really top heavy with just David Pastrnak. Yeah. And then even Ullmark, he's got 6 games. He's 4-1-1. And the difference between 6-0 and 4-1-1 is a 9.26 save percentage. So even at that's elite save percentage. Even at an elite save percentage, they're dropping games.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, you have one guy that's basically your offense right now. And you're going to be playing solid defense. But once you get, look what happened to them last year. They came into the buzzsaw, the Florida Panthers. I mean, you're going to be going up against high offensive teams. So, and they start off the season on a Western Conference trip too. So they got to face some punching bags before they came back to the East. So
did they face the Sharks though? Because that's a dead giveaway.
I don't know.
You know what? They may have lost to Anaheim as well, which would be fun.
They did.
Yeah, they lost. They lost to Anaheim. That was their overtime loss.
Yeah.
Their regulation loss was to the Red Wings. So, but they have. Let's look at who they've beaten, because now I'm interested. They beat the Blackhawks. So whatever. Stinks. They beat the Predators. They beat the Sharks. They beat the Kings. This is a long West Coast trip. They beat the Ducks. They beat the Blackhawks again. Then they lost to the Ducks. And then they've been playing some teams in the East with the Red Wings, Bruins, Maple Leafs, which, by the way, the Maple Leafs took them to a shootout, and the Panthers took them to overtime, and then they lost to the Red Wings. So that's overtime, shootout, then loss. Like there's a little bit of vulnerability against them maybe when they're
and the Panthers aren't having that good of a season, right? The Panthers are kind of down right now too, right?
The Panthers are all right. They've played 11 games and they've got 13 points, 6-4-1, better than us right now.
Yeah,
but it's not so much better that I guess it's the same amount of points, but 2 games in hand. So it's not so much better that like
Yeah.
I'm super worried about it yet. Again, I still think that we've been getting better. We started the year really slow. So I think that we're still probably revving up into gear more so than other teams. But yeah.
So bring the offense against the Bruins. I mean,
at least try to.
Yeah.
Make Swayman work for that 9-5-6.
You think they play Swayman or they play Allmark back home?
They've been splitting it 50-50, so they both played 6 games. So I think it'll be a like coin toss, but
so we'll see.
They're both playing really well. Either way, my takeaway for Boston, what I want to see is I want to see you make those goalies work for those numbers. Because if you go in and you pepper shots from the outside and let them pad their stats, I'm going to be really disappointed that we're feeding a statistic.
Yeah. All right. So that's going to be our next week. So that's a show for tonight. Like we always say, comment, like, subscribe on the show. Subscribe to Nickel City Mafia. Check out all their shows as well if you're interested in the Buffalo Bills. But besides that, like Mike says, show us some love. We always love that love. But yeah, let us know in the comments too. Anything that you want us to talk about more. I'll be happy to talk about that. But besides that, guys, have a good night. See you later, Sam.
See ya. And remember, we will see you guys on Wednesday of next week.
Wednesday, 8:30.